veggies in your omelet, like just ridiculous shit, and no carbs at all. You don't need carbs. I don't need carbs. You don't actually need them. And instead of drinking coffee with like half and half in it, because wait, is your coffee basically black now?
It's not. It's almost there.
Yeah, I would just get some full fat cream and put a tablespoon of full fat cream in there.
It's half and half.
Yeah, but the half and half is probably what's fucking with your stomach.
My stomach's not fucked with.
I know, but it acts, sometimes it gets fucked with. And you know what's fucking it up is the carbs. It's not the dairy. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because actually when I drink, in the rare occasion, once a month, once every other month when I drink a beer, it gives me...
it's the beer. It's the carbs in the beer.
Yeah.
If you had like...
Maybe it is. Because it gives me gas.
If you had like... Yeah, right. If you had tequila with like a squeeze of...
I can drink it black. It's not even... I just do it because it's like a little treat.
A little treat. Yeah,
I don't even need to do it. And I actually had it yesterday. I took a meeting with these kids, these young filmmakers, and they wanted to ask questions, you know. And then we met at a coffee shop up on the Upper West Side, and then they and I just had a black, and I hadn't had one in a while because I've been doing this, and then it was like perfectly.
It's delicious.
Yeah. Do you want to have headphones?
No, I mean not unless I need to.
No, not at all. So that's it. So it's on.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
I assumed it was already on.
Yeah. Well, it's easier just to...
Because you approached the mic like you were talking in the mic like this.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, God, he's recording.
Well, it's always a weird transition from real life to pretending to be real life. But if you don't do this enough, it is more natural. But I don't know. It's been so long since I've not done it, these types of things. So I'm used to being on the mic and it feeling natural.
On the mic. 1, 2.
Anyway, here we go. This is a first.
Maybe a last.
I don't know. There's no natural way into this thing. You're in Pipeline. It was but let's start with that. We can talk about Pipeline because why not? You did this. It was off-Broadway at the Lincoln Center Theater.
At the Mitzi Newhouse.
What?
Mitzi Newhouse is
Mitzi
the name
Newhouse
of the theater.
Yeah, that's right. And that was like a year and a half ago?
It was almost exactly a year ago. It ended in August 2017, all the way through the summer from like May to August.
Uh-huh. And you're in like practically, if not every moment of it, right?
Yeah. I was on stage a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So they filmed it. It was, a filming of a stage production, right?
That's right. And so Live at Lincoln Center did this with another musical earlier in the year. But
that's not a musical, but another play, right? That is a musical.
Yeah, another play that's a musical they did it with. And then they saw Pipeline, played by Dominique Morisseau, and they decided, we really do want to do this same treatment with this story because we think it's really relevant. And so they cobbled together some money, and they, the last couple of days of production of the play, they decided they wanted to try to film it for PBS.
Right, yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
That it would be done for, because you see those kind of plays on PBS all the time.
Right, on PBS. So
not necessarily in the theaters.
The interesting thing about it is that in the midst of creating the story narrative around the production, they opened it up for a theatrical release, and now that's what's happening with it. So we're very excited that it's going from this idea of, it's going to be on public television, it's going to do the thing there, into the... now it's going into a theatrical release. It's going to be released in a number of theaters across the country on October 3rd, on that weekend, first weekend in October, 4th, 5th, 6th, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
And
so,
but
like
we're having
theatrical.
that's right, a limited theatrical release.
Yeah, I always agree that this is the way they should handle actually many independent films, smaller films. That a week is what's required for consideration, Oscar consideration, award ceremony, consideration, and for other qualifying eligibilities and that kind of thing. So a week-long theatrical, like in New York City or LA, you know about that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, but I always thought, but on a practical level, nobody's sitting in the theater. Like 90% of those, I mean, yeah, Friday night, hopefully Saturday. But that's it. Otherwise, a lot of movies, not all, certainly all, but many smaller movies that can't advertise widely and all that to have a lot of money. You know, people just don't know about them, or they're not good. You know, or no, they're not great. So it's like this big waste to have these films. You know, but then again, what are you going to do? Have nothing going on in the theater? So, you know, on the other hand, you just run them. But to do something like a weekend or a 3-day thing makes a lot of sense from just a practical standpoint.
Yes, it's at that 5th, 6th, and 7th that weekend. I think you're right. I mean, that there has to be a variety of stories told in American cinema, and not all of them are told in big blockbuster ways. A lot of them are told in the smallest ways, and this is part of what the story of Pipeline is about. I mean, it sort of has a very specific argument about how brown children are fed into the penal system in the United States.
A thing. Pipeline is a term.
Right.
It's a thing. It's not just this play. I mean, it's a thing that a lot of people don't know about it. That when people refer to the pipeline, that's what they mean.
Yes, they mean about
African
brown children
boys,
in public or private schools that are very early in their lives fed into the penal system, either through juvenile courts or juvenile facilities, and how that leads them to more or worse experiences in the prison system in the United States. And it is something that Ava DuVernay has talked about in her 13, and you know,
but it's a nefarious thing because it's suggested by the fact that there is even a term for it, that it's almost like a dark. I don't want to call it not a process, but this is you know, I'm sleep deprived, so this is my mind isn't working fast. But this is like a actual thing. It's not like institutionalized. It's not official, but that this is a thing that's like, I don't want to get too far afield, but prisons are privatized, etc. So there's a great amount of incentive that this pipeline exists, you know, because there's a lot of money to be made off of the backs of this.
And it is researched and it's documented, and you know, the Obama administration talks about it, and we certainly talk about it nowadays about the privatization of the penal system in America, but how brown people are inordinately put into this system, and how it reflects a certain kind of racism, a certain kind of a new kind of Jim Crow, which is something that Dominique, the playwright, talks a lot about. And obviously there's a book called The New Jim Crow. So anyway, this is...
There is?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. I haven't read it. I will.
It's called The New Jim Crow. It's a great book. And so what the play talks about is not just the story about what the pipeline might look like for African Americans, but for a very specific family, and the emotional trajectory that each of the characters in the story go through as a function of being a part of the education system, the teachers, from the teachers to the security guard.
Of the school.
Right. From the mother to the son, the girlfriend of the son who's trying to help him navigate all the emotions that go along with having done something at school where he is suddenly subjected to the legal system, and that he has to justify choices that he's made in the classroom, or he could go to jail.
Yeah.
So the father and his influence in the son's life, and then the family's life, and all the different ways that Dominique, as a writer, has decided to explore her perspective on it. And a lot of that comes through her perspective, having worked in public schools. She is from Detroit. The story is set in Detroit. Her mother is the inspiration for the character that I play, Nya Joseph. And of course, you know that both my parents are teachers, and their experience in public schools, where I was raised in Nashville, Tennessee, certainly impacted me, and it's fertile ground in my experience of the story. So it says a lot, but it really does say it through the filter of the emotional, the feeling impact of what a family, an African-American family, experiences in dealing with this very nefarious is the word you use, and I would definitely use that word, sinister feeling that your child is going to be sucked down into the most challenging and difficult parts of society through the penal system, and how that is specific to being an African American child.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I remember, I saw the play when you were in it. Took Jacob, actually, our son. What? Yeah. Those who are listening to me gather more information throughout the conversation, which we'll probably address at some point. But we saw it, and I was the one thing that comes across in the play is how palpable Nya, that's the character's name?
Nya.
Nya's anxiety is about losing her son. You know, it's for any parent, you know, just to adulthood and to, but in this case, it's particularly scary. You know, it's a scary thing. I wonder why. Like, I guess it's just a naive question, maybe, but I wonder why they just don't make this into a narrative film, like adapt it like they did, you know, A Kid Named Jake, or some of these other, so many plays that are adapted into. You need somebody to invest in it, and you know. Well,
I think that's a very good question, and you know, we talk about this in the industry: inclusive filmmaking,
right?
Diverse filmmaking.
David Duchovny, though,
how those stories are told. You know, yeah, who knows? And that may still occur. But at this point, you know, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the story to be told to a lot of different people. Right. We'll have this theatrical release, but then it will be
institutional. It needs an educational release. Well,
it will be also on broadcast? PBS, and so the schools will, and anybody can see this play for free on the public television, which is
they
important.
If you show it in a school, you have to. It's a different system. You can't just play it. Like, you can't just DVR
it. No, but because it's on public television, it is going to be
people. Families can see it. You can
families and schools will be able to access that information. Well, it's going to be built around a whole bunch of other stories that PBS is going to tell.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So they're going to have the story told, but they're also going to tell the stories in a more historical perspective of what that pipeline looks like, what the penal system in America has looked like, how African Americans have been funneled into it over decades of time.
Right.
You know, Ava DuVernay talks about it in 13 and what happened in the 80s and 90s piece. And, you know, how that how that's impacted where we are as a country today. And so, I mean, there's a macro and there's a micro.
Right.
In the play, in the version of the story that, you know, your listeners will see, it is, again, the story, the emotional story.
Right. No. You can see
what the family goes through, and the historical and other perspectives on it. I love that the playwright Dominique makes the assumption that you already know about basically what the pipeline looks like in America, and how, because we talk about it a lot in society, how brown people, especially young brown boys, are funneled through it.
Yeah. Well, the agenda doesn't infringe on the personal story. It's a story just about a mom and her kid and the father, and you could just look at it like that. You don't have to go much further, but it's there, and it's like the elephant in the room. But you could also just watch it as just a family story.
And I think that's part of what makes it universal.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
That is where you could go into it, and it was actually Father's Day in 2017. That Father's Day weekend that you saw it. That we, it was a Father's Day thing with Jacob, where you came and we had dinner afterwards, and it is one of those stories that, in this specific, is a universal, right? It is a story of an African American mother and her son, but so many people came up to me after that play and in tears, just saying, you know, this is the. I feel the same way you feel. I felt the same way you felt. The teachers who came to see the play reflected back on their own experiences. New York City public school teachers, the children who came from, and some of the children we were lucky to have who had come from juvenile, quote unquote, detention centers in New York City and Queens and the Bronx and Brooklyn, and who came and said, you know what, those kids that are telling this story, that's me. They're using language I use, you know. And so, again, in the specific is a universal. I think anyone can relate to the story of, you know, being afraid for your child.
Right. I think that what turns people off is when that's not handled quite so well. And I think the play, even if it's like any ambitious work, it has its flaws. But I think what makes it work so well is that the playwright does get to into the heart of these people, into the emotional truth of these characters, which is what makes it, like I say, compelling and universal, etc. So, I recommend people go check it out.
Well, I think it's interesting because there is a perception of one of the things that I love about working on this play, and I want to say something about Liliana Blaine Cruz, who was the director of the story, and her insertion of different music and the projections that are used in the story. I forgot about those Justin Ellington, who handled the music in it, and Yi, who did the lighting. I mean, it was just Hannah, who did the projections. It was an incredible artistic coming together, and it just did a magnificent thing under the hand of Liliana Blaine Cruz. I do want to say that there is something about understanding the gaze of the African American woman in American cinema and American television and in American theater. We don't see it enough. So it's important for us to start to widen the framework of how we critique this kind of work. And I think that for a lot of people who are used to seeing things in the framework of how white men create stories, they frame it and they put it on stage, or they put it on film, or they put it on television. We think, oh, well, that's the standard. That's how it should look. But in the construct of an African-American artist, an African-American director, an African-American writer, when you look at their work, you have to look at it in a different kind of a way. I mean, what someone may see as flawed, another person may see as absolutely reflective of the things that I look at when I look at something in cinema or something in television or theater. I mean, I look at the work of Lynn Nottage, and she looks at the things that I look at. Her gaze is where I'm looking. I look at an incredible movie like Mudbound, and I'm looking at that, and what she's looking at is what I'm looking at. And many times I go to other films.
What are you looking at?
It's just a different perspective. An African American woman's perspective on storytelling is one that's coming from deeply spiritual, deeply heart-filled, deeply feeling, deep. And I don't think that a lot of people are used to navigating through all of that feeling, but this is part of the spiritual dynamic of being an African American. We have to deal with so much that we have to heighten our moral sense of what it is to live in this society. But there is a great amount of anger and desperation and fear and anxiety that translates itself in ways that I think Dominique absolutely captures, but that people aren't used to, especially people who see a lot of film and see a lot of television work. They're not used to looking at it like that. They're like, oh, well, that's too much. That feels like melodrama. It is absolutely not melodrama. It is a deeply feeling writer talking about an area of our psyche, our experience, our human experience that people aren't all that comfortable navigating in. And part of the African American experience, especially artistic, I'm talking about Langston Hughes, we talk about Gwendolyn Brooks, we talk about Native Son in the story, because these are stories about artistic experiences and interpretations of the African American experience that are deeply challenging and painful for people to take a look at. And what I appreciate about Liliana, and I know I'm going on and on and on, but what I appreciate about Liliana and about Dominique and them including me in the collaborative experience of bringing this piece of art to life is that we are dealing with it from the perspective, an emotional, a feeling perspective that can only come from what African American women deal with and see. And it is important for people to start to become acquainted and engaged with that conversation. I think it can only lift up our ability to see each other again in the specific is a universal. I mean, I believe that as an artist to my very core. So I did want to navigate through that conversation of, well, what does it work and what does it look like if it's flawed and what is it? I think that
well, you know what I mean. Flawed. I mean,
no, I don't know what you mean. I think
it's not perfect. Very few things are perfect. It just mean like.
I mean that's your perception. I think my understanding of the story.
I didn't think of it as melodramatic. This particular thing, I didn't think of it. To my recollection, I don't remember it feeling that way. But maybe I did.
I think there are some critiques of it that.
Oh. I don't remember the feeling that way about this. I mean, I think also I have to give it a little bit more I give it a little bit more. I give it more
benefit of the doubt
because it's theater, and theater always feels to some degree a little heightened. So I don't know that that's what I felt. I have to see it again.
Well, I'm a year later. I'm a year after having done this story,
right.
So I've been able to go through all of the critical reviews of it and see.
I didn't read any of those.
And
maybe I read one.
Well, I have. And
maybe I read the New York Times when it came out. I don't remember it.
Part of the dynamic of doing this, doing press for the movie is that you get sent information about what the marketing looks like, and of course they highlight some of the more positive reviews that and you of course read everything at that point, so you can know how people have received it. But it's beside the point. The point that I'm making and what I'm really interested in as an artist, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, is that I do feel like it's important not just for us to diversify our understanding of what writers and directors and actors are saying who are different from us, but to open up a dialogue with them about what is your perspective, and how can I be more inclusive in my language and my ability to understand what it is that you see about life. And in that way, we find common ground. And one of the few places we find common ground in our society is in American theater. That is where we find it. I mean, that's A Kid Like Jake. That is a play that I did, Disgraced, years ago, that was on Broadway. That is some of the most profound, important work that I am attracted to in American cinema. And for that matter, independent or documentary or what have you. I mean, I think it's important that as we navigate through our 21st century experience of who we are culturally, that we start opening ourselves up. There's a saying in African American community, for the culture. Do you know? We do this for the culture, which is we do this to uplift, we have a conversation, to keep a conversation moving forward, not just about bullshit, but about the things that really matter. Mm-hmm.
It's like an extra layer of responsibility.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
That most of us don't have to think about,
let alone
invest or do anything about.
Yeah, because I think in a lot of ways, as African American artists, I mean, I look at Ruby Dee, I look at Lena Horne, I look at Langston Hughes, I look at
Cicely Tyson,
all of these writers, actors, directors, whatever, George Wolfe. What we're doing, how we're building. Generations of actors and directors and people who have made sacrifices, who have paid what we call the black tax. I often look about my experience in theater and what I'm doing as to what's going to come up after me. Who is going to benefit from what I'm doing right now, and how I'm fighting to tell this story or do this thing? Who's going to benefit from it? And that's really a function of what generations of African Americans are still trying to navigate.
Yeah,
certainly what we're trying to navigate culturally, artistically. Who can tell the story? And whoever tells the story, as Lin-Manuel Miranda says, whoever tells the story actually gets a leg up on what that story looks like. So yeah, I just talked a blues streak.
No, it's great. That's what you want when you do one of these shows.
Is that true?
Yeah, of course. I'm not going to do I do the intro and I talk then, but I love it when I invite somebody on and they have a great, you ask a question and then they talk for good like that. But, it's a dialogue, but it's important things to say. There are important things to say. The name of that production we're talking about is called Pipeline, and it was off-Broadway. The Lincoln Center Theater is in between Broadway and off-Broadway in a way. It's right. It's not. Is it technically considered off-Broadway?
The
I don't
theater,
mean to argue
the Mitzi
these
Newhouse. The Mitzi
details.
Newhouse is considered an off-Broadway theater.
Venue.
They also have another theater there,
right?
The Claire Tao, which is another version of their off-Broadway. But then they also have the Vivian Beaumont, which is the Broadway version. And there aren't any other places in New York City where you can go and there will be an off-Broadway
all in one venue
stage, right? And there's a Broadway stage, and then there's another off-Broadway stage. I mean, it all feels like going to Lincoln. Plus, there's ballet, there's opera, there's, it feels like an entire.
Oh yeah, and then I'm there all the
world.
time. And I'm there the next 3 weeks for New York Film Festival press screenings.
Whatever they're doing downstairs.
It'll
be
at the Walter Reed across the street.
At the Walter Reed
Film
across the street,
Center.
right. Mm-hmm.
There's going to be during the actual festival.
Right.
So it's Lincoln Center is just it's an incredible still.
It has its own.
It's a whole.
Yeah, it does. The fabric of what they do there is very much embedded in New York City, and which is why I think this was a perfect story to be told there. Nothing like this story has ever been told there, and one of the things that was interesting about doing it, which we can't really include in the movie version of it because we didn't get the rights to the song, but it was very fascinating to encounter Kendrick Lamar in the storytelling, which we used a lot in his music in the story.
I've heard the name, but I don't remember.
Kendrick Lamar just won a Pulitzer.
Oh, he's the hip hop artist.
Yes, he's being facetious.
No. I'm telling you, I'm sleep deprived. But now I know why I know the name. Yes, because he just won. He's the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize. No. Let me finish my sentence. For
music or rap,
a rap artist. Yes,
or he might be the first rap artist.
No, he definitely is.
Yeah, for sure.
To win a Pulitzer, that's what I was getting at.
Right. So
I can edit out the other part.
Overdue.
Sure.
Anyway, so really fascinating part because for those of your listeners who haven't been in Lincoln Center, it is there
are probably a few.
Probably the most sort of privileged reflection of theater white culture in New York City. So to see white folks coming into the theater and Kendrick Lamar playing very loudly over the sound system.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all changed because of Lin-Manuel
Miranda, his influence on American theater.
Yeah. I mean, I think
it's
that
all changed.
Well, I think there's been a sea change. I think that people are looking at now because of that. It's made that okay. It's made rap music okay. It's made this thing more palatable to a larger audience and less threatening on some level. I'm just sort of making assumptions and generalizations here, so I'll just stop. But I do think that...
No, I agree with you to some extent. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda was doing
popularized it to a new audience.
Yeah, I think he was doing that even before.
I mean,
there's In the
What
Heights.
did he do before?
He was doing In the Heights, which is incredibly successful, Tony-winning musical. But I also I think part of the zeitgeist, we were in the middle of the Obama administration when Hamilton came along. We were in a open and diverse conversation about... what it meant culturally to be a brown person. And then, of course, we sort of got into a,
what are you going to say?
Difficult political climate.
Well, yeah, I just don't want to get specific about it.
Difficult political climate for diversity and inclusion and all that means. And I think that part of culturally what we need to express is to see more stories like Hamilton and Pipeline and Sweat. But for the most part in American theater, we don't see that. I mean, 95% of what we see on Broadway stages in America or the American Broadway stage tends to lean towards whiteness, that part of our culture, which is frustrating but true.
No argument.
Well, that's good.
We're talking to Karen Pittman, who is an American actor. And we share a son together.
That's true.
A child, and we were married in the 90s, in the mid-90s. And
what are you talking about? We got married in 2000s, after 9/11.
We met in the mid-90s. That's
in
right.
The late 90s.
And we just passed the 17th anniversary of 9/11, and I was thinking a lot about that particular day and memories of those days.
Yeah.
And we're living in a temporary apartment across from the 92nd Street Y. And that whole time, man, it just brought back a lot of memories.
It was very challenging.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, I wanted to invite you on for a long time. This seemed just like a good project, right? Just kind of to do that because this is a film podcast and Pipeline. Although you've done some films, I think this is in a way, even though it's kind of ironically, what do they call these types of not a teleplay, but that's what they used to call this type of thing. When
God, you are dating yourself. Teleplay.
Well, no one else will. They would film a stage show, a lot of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And they would show it on public television. This was very, very typical. And they're some work better than others. This, I think, will work quite well. And I think it's interesting that they're showing it theatrically, like I said. So people should look. And it's the first weekend of October.
That's right, October 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Do you know where it's going to be playing in New York?
I don't know exactly where it's going to be playing in New York. I know we're doing it at Sinopolis down on 23rd Street. That's where we're doing that may be where it is showing, but that's where we're doing the premiere on the 24th.
Right. September 24th?
Which is also your birthday. Let's say we're going to do that. But also, this isn't the first time I've been a part of a production. I did Passing Strange.
Passing Strange was shot by Spike Lee.
That's right. Who also shot another film recently by Antoinette Nwandu, another play recently by Antoinette Nwandu called Passover.
Oh. Passover Strange.
No.
No? Okay.
It's so funny, interesting. But so I think that...
So we were talking last, which was already a month ago or something, if you can believe it, about Pipeline's theatrical, and so that was good. And then I was able to post it because we at least got that part of the conversation. And then I had a technical problem, which just happens once in a rare while. But so I don't know. When is the announcement for the next?
Well, so the announcement's already been made. It's had a theatrical release October 3rd, 5th, and 7th all around the country, and it was lots of important, communities that really do need to see the story about, a family who's dealing with their kid who's possibly going to be in the school to prison pipeline. So October 3rd, 5th, and 7th, I was in Atlanta and then in Alabama on that weekend, and I was so excited to share it with the world. We had our premiere at Sinopolis, and now the play, which is, at its theatrical release, is going to be on BroadwayHD.com. So you can subscribe to Broadway HD and look at all the wonderful musicals in American theater and plays that they broadcast. And Pipeline obviously was an off-Broadway show, as we discussed previously on an episode. It was done at the Missy Newhouse, but it is available on Broadway HD, and that's worldwide. And that's a really important thing for this story to be told in as many different areas of the world as it can, because it is so relevant and the conversation is universal.
Broadway HD, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like maybe it's on cable. BroadwayHD.com
is a streaming service that you can go to the internet, go to BroadwayHD.com. You subscribe.
Yeah.
You're a subscriber, and you get to see an unlimited number of Broadway plays and musicals, but also this particular story is going to end up being...
Right. So, okay. That's I didn't know that existed. So in between Kinky Boots and Oklahoma or something, you can catch.
And Go-Go's musical and Donna Summer and Mean Girls, you can catch.
Those are all things.
Pipeline.
Uh-huh. All righty.
That's right.
All right. So thanks a lot and take care.
Is that it?
No, I'm kidding. And then this production, which is very important, we'll have more announcements later on, either later this year or in the new year.
Yeah, because the important thing about this particular story, and the playwright Dominique Morisseau feels this way, is that what we hope to do is create as many outlets for people to see the story and have access to it. It really, it's just so resonant and relevant at this point.
I think you articulated that real well on the first part.
Yeah.
So this is part 2, and but it will be seamless for those listening now. I just mentioned to you, I texted you the other day from the theater, as I usually do when I go to the theater, which is like once every month or two these days. Mm-hmm. I'm on this, I can't really talk about it, but I get these invitations to the public theaters, which I like because I have a long history with the public theater, first of all. So I have those associations. But so there's a litmus there. There's a filter of usually of quality that I can rely on. Mm-hmm. So like I know that even the worst productions there, and I shouldn't use that word, but let's say even the least best or something like that are going to be pretty good.
Yeah,
because you can't, mediocre stuff just doesn't make its way to. Because that guy that runs the place,
Oscar Eustace is that guy.
He does. I know that guy. He's just he's like a great programmer. He just develops great plays and playwrights and has great stuff going on at the public theater. So
there's a really strong mission at the public theater too. I mean, they're the home of Hamilton and Fun Home and Shakespeare in the Park and a chorus line
40 years ago.
Yeah,
that's where I saw it. I was a little kid.
Joseph Papp was there.
It was barely grown. I was like half Jacob's age. I was like 8 years old. And or 9, so maybe not half, but I went with my parents in the summer of 73 or whatever, or 74, and we went to, my parents were members of the public theater, and they took me to see this musical, which, I got to tell you, even as a little kid, I kind of knew that was going to be a thing, and of course it's many, many decades later, but it was groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah, and that's the history of the public.
And I still remember some of the people in it.
Yeah.
Including Priscilla Lopez. Anyhow,
that's the history of the public theater.
Yeah,
they've done it for a long time.
It's incredible to know that I've actually been going to it since early on. But anyway, I was there the other day. Past weekend, I got another invitation, and I got to see this play with Glenn Close.
Yes,
called Mother of the Maid, and oh my gosh, that was great.
I didn't see that. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's so good.
I know. I love Glenn Close. She's so great.
She is so good in this. She will wrench your heart.
All right.
I mean, it's so rare to be moved to tears in a play for me. I mean, I actually was seeing you in a play. You're a good actor. But I don't get to, it's so rare just to see that, just kind of the combination of great writing, great acting, and just, everybody just in that theater, and everybody was just, the moment people were just riveted to that, they contemporaryized the language, which was odd. Because it takes place, of course, in, what is that, medieval? Mm-hmm. Joan of Arc? No, that's not medieval. That's...
that might not be medieval, but centuries ago.
Yeah. I'm thinking... I'm showing how ignorant I am. But anyhow, it's the family's story about the Joan of Arc story. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of behind the scenes in the sense of what was going on. This was a real family. So the language and the humor in it made you relate to them as people, which is great because, of course, that's what you hope for. Unlike Shakespeare, it's hard to connect with those characters in any human level, with some exceptions, of course, but it's hard to because of the language barrier and the artifice that's created by the theatricality about, of all that, which is, is legitimate for another way of experiencing theater, so I'm not saying one's better than the other.
Right.
In this case, though, it after a short time, you sort of got used to the way they were using the language, kind of more colloquially than you knew they would have spoken back then.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that a few things I want to pick up on is that public theater, you have a community that's interested in conversations that are different, cutting edge, that sort of a thing. And so there's just the content itself, and then there's a community of people who come see it. And finally, I think the artists, the actors, the collaborators, the writers, directors are all interested in working in the public theater because of the historical aspect of what that theater was with Joseph Papp, and with George Wolfe, and now with Oscar Eustace, because these are all great arbiters and architects of American theater who have imbued their fingerprint on who the public theater is and what they produce. And so it's wonderful. It's a great experience. I am looking forward to seeing that play.
Yeah. Please go see it. I haven't read the reviews or anything. Maybe it'll be tomorrow.
But who cares about reviews?
I'm just curious.
It's a good play. It's a good play.
Oh, I haven't.
Don't read reviews, everybody.
I don't read them, obviously, for telling me whether to go or not. I read them just kind of to find out what the reaction is to the, and how that will affect the play, I guess. I'm just curious. Anyway, you were a graduate of NYU Theater School, master's program in acting, and they had a relationship with the public too, right? Didn't they? I guess they must have invited the class through for certain workshops.
Well, yes, they did. I mean, during the time when I was there, I studied under Zelda Fitzchandler, who, if anybody here knows about theater in America, you'll know that she is one of the architects of creating the regional theater idiom.
What's that?
Practically. Which means that for many, many decades, in order to see a theatrical production, you would have to go to Broadway to see it. But Zelda,
you're not talking about community theaters around the country always existed.
No, exactly. I'm talking about regions in the United States where you would want to see the kind of theater that you see in the regions now. And let's say, especially in Washington, D.C. is where Arena Theater, which is what she started with her husband, was the architect of creating opportunities for people to see Broadway quality shows in their cities or their
nearby, closer.
Yeah, much closer than having to go travel all the way up to New York City from, let's say, DC or from Boston or from Chicago or from Los Angeles to see a Broadway show. You would have to actually come to New York City. Mm-hmm. So at any rate, Zelda was the chair of the program at the time that I was there between 2004 and 2007. And we did have our entree into the public theater through a class that I had with Oscar Eustis. And we're actually now the 50th anniversary of NYU. We're having a big celebration on Monday at the Bowery Hotel to celebrate that the program is 50 years old. It's going to, hopefully all the alums will come back and we'll celebrate together. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an important part of the training of American actors that we can go into university and we can learn what we need to learn about the craft. One of my teachers there, Victor Pappas, would often say to me, there are a lot of talented people out here, but not everyone is committed or dedicated to craft, which is a different kind of a conversation that you have as an artist. It forces you to be in collaboration and to be constantly looking for a muse inspired by the world and by the culture to continue to produce work. And that's a different kind of a mechanism as in an artist versus just being gifted with a talent. So training can often develop that in you and keep you focused on that. And that's certainly what NYU did for me. One of the things I learned in working with Oscar Eustis and obviously with Zelda Fitzchandler was this commitment to new work and developing new work and making yourself available as an actor to developing writers and directors who are figuring it out. And specifically for me as an actor, it is important that I help to have conversations and develop African-American female writers, African-American female directors. I was very blessed to end up working with Liliana Blaine Cruz and Dominique Morisseau on this play Pipeline. I don't think that, and I don't know if I've talked about this before with you, but I don't feel like in American culture we see enough of what the African-American woman sees, that African-American female gaze. I don't think it's something that we have a lot of opportunity to get to because of how the industry is structured. We are seeing the gaze of a particular American viewpoint. And I think part of what's great about working in the public and in other areas of our culture is that we're starting to expand and open up to different ideas and different perspectives. What is authentic to the experience of being an African-American, specifically an African-American woman, but all that storytelling and all that needs to be developed. And I learned the importance of that working with Oscar.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, in the film work you do you take those same tools? Is it harder because of the...
It is harder because, the film industry is much more competitive. Yeah. It's much more challenging to navigate your way in there and arm wrestle into stories that you think are going to be important. But really, for me as an actor, any any platform that I can help create is, my goal as an actor is to tell the biggest and broadest story in the most specific way I can, in the biggest platform I can create for myself and for my collaborators. And so sometimes that's film, and sometimes that's theater, and sometimes that's TV. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's serious. Like right now, I'm working on a TV show called Living with Yourself with Paul Rudd.
It's a comedy, I guess.
Well, he's funny.
It's always funny.
He's funny, but he's also very real, and working with him is a lot of fun. And the storytelling was written by a guy named Timothy Greenberg, and it's really great. And it's only got 8 episodes, and Netflix is doing it, and I'm excited about working with it. Very, very different from Pipeline.
Right.
Very, very different from The Americans, which is another TV show that I worked on. From the Marvel Comics show I worked on, and Luke Cage. Different, original, first of its kind. So, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, where are they shooting that?
Here, New York City.
Yeah, where do they shoot that?
I can't tell you where they're shooting it because
is it a studio though?
I can't tell you where they're shooting it because it's all like hush hush. I mean, the fact that I'm even telling you, I probably shouldn't even be telling you that I'm working on it. But
when is it supposed to start?
I don't know. Well, you mean is it going to be shown on Netflix?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
No idea.
I just shoot it, and sometimes it comes out weeks later,
right.
and then sometimes it comes out months.
A year later, you know.
Nobody knows.
Okay, because I didn't know if that
they decide.
That. He's one of those guys that has been able to kind of go between kind of dramatic, independent, and dramatic work, and then do Hollywood comedies, and
Yeah, he's in the Ant-Man thing, and I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, he's also in that.
Yeah, the Ant-Man show and the Wasp thing, and I had no idea. I was like, geez Louise, you're just doing everything. So, okay. Well,
I think that what we got onto last time, and again, there's certainly no reason why we have to retread or repeat anything. So, but what we did talk about was just what it is like for you to really try to navigate the career that you're trying to have. And also, I don't know if you feel the pressure of time and of all these other, things at the same time, or are you more just sort of just working towards good work, or you're trying to get good work and not get in your own way?
I think over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, a shift has been a little bit into just following a muse. I've seen a pattern in my body of work that I often will end up doing things that people are there. It's original material, never been done, great collaborators, kind of risky. Oops, everybody likes it. Do you know what I mean? And that's sort of been the function of my work. The people who seek me out to work with me are people who actually are interested in doing something a little different and looking at things differently. The roles that I get aren't specifically designed for an African American female. Like the last several roles that I've gotten have nothing to do with she has to be black, or she has to be 40s, or she has to be 50s, or she has to be white, or she has to be like the role that I'm doing on Living with Yourself, which is a show with Paul Rudd, is actually for a white woman in her 60s who owns a advertising company, and actually I'm none of that, right? So so there is. I think what I'm apt to do now as an artist, and I think this takes a certain level of maturity, is to follow the muse, to wait to be inspired. But I also think that's a function, and you'll recognize this of being a musician. When writers aren't writing, or musicians aren't touring, they're not doing anything. Like, they're not trying to write their one-person show. Do you know what I mean? They're not trying to, create, a TV show or anything. When musicians aren't creating music, they're down. They go down. They don't, they wait for the muse to approach them. And that's kind of the...
Well, some people chase it,
That's right. Some people do chase it. And I think that's a hard life. That's a hard experience. But I think for the most part, especially the musicians and artists and writers that I appreciate, they're people who wait for the muse to arrive, because she always does. And that's sort of my perspective now on my work. As an actor, you don't work all the time. It's intermittent. And anybody in your audience will know that. Even if you're Frances McDormand, right? You're not working, 9-10 months out of the year. You find a project you're really interested in, you develop it, and you film it for, 2 or 3 months, and then you wait for the next project to come up that you're interested in working in. So, that's part of my experience right now, not constantly auditioning or being out there or trying to find collaborators and stories that are really interesting for me to tell, and throwing my hat in the ring and saying, hey, are you guys interested in playing with me? And that's different. That's a different story than being an actor who wants to be on, let's say, a TV show. Not that I don't want to be in Shondaland, but of course I want to be in Shondaland, but that hasn't been my career yet. Like, I haven't. Shondaland, that's ABC. That's a big network television night of shows. And she's one of the biggest TV producer, if not the biggest TV producer in American television. And, I haven't had that opportunity. I've had the opportunity to create very specific characters all over the place. And that's been very interesting. Yeah, it is. Me.
I mean, so you leave behind a body of work. There is that. I'm sure in weaker moments, that's a struggle, because you also want to be recognized financially, and there's a sort of a hierarchy, or whatever. It's like you say, it's competitive.
Yep.
And you want to be recognized as having the choices, and having that position. I get it.
Right, but some of the actors I respect and love the most, including people like Mahershala Ali and Octavia Spencer, and of course, Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro and all those actors. They are actors who you do look at their body of work, and it's taken them a while to build their career and what it looks like. But there's certainly memorable roles and memorable characters that you think back on, and you connect with them and their identity, who they are as artists. And that's important to me in ways that I can't really even explain. Mm-hmm. You want to be known as an actor who really shares a part of themselves with the characters that they develop and they inspire, and that's certainly part of the experience of being an actor too. So, I'm a little bit different in that perspective now as an artist. It really is about creating art versus just acting, just auditioning and just going out there.
Well, that's part and parcel, right? But the way you talk about the process, it's really all about this artistic approach, which is, it's an art, but it's, and you speak about it in a more spiritual way, as opposed to the politics, which I feel like, the lost conversation from last time, felt like it was a more of a personal and political almost perspective, in a sense of, where you're coming from and how difficult it is when you, I don't know how much you encounter. Maybe what the question is, I guess, is, do you encounter a type of behavior as being like a black actor? Do you feel
a type of behavior from
casting people and producers that are, and without it becoming like this thing where you have a chip on your shoulder, because that's also got to be something you're self-conscious about, this perception.
Well, to some extent, there's nothing you can do about it. I came into this world in a body with brown skin and a vagina. There's really nothing I can do about that.
Did you just say brown skin?
Brown skin and a vagina. There's nothing I can do about that.
There are things you can do.
Yeah, but
no,
I'm not going to do anything about it. And so the trick is that you just, the trick is that you stay connected to what it is you want to do. I was talking to somebody about this morning. Everybody has a hard time. If I go back to my, semi-Christian Buddhist roots in the world, every single human being has a hard time. There's no moral high ground in acting like, oh shit, this is so hard. But I will say there are a certain set of circumstances that are created for women of color in this industry, which we talk about, equal pay, the challenge of whatever the beauty standard is, your hair is natural or your hair is straight. There are certain things that we have to deal with that are, a part of the experience of being an artist and being an actor. And balancing those things out can be very, very troublesome and very, very difficult. The politics of which I think that in some ways you get away from if you focus on what it is your intention is in your work. Whatever your intention is in your work, it doesn't matter if you're a white guy, if you're an Asian woman, if you're a black guy, or you are, a Latino director, whatever, the important thing is to focus on what your intention is. What are you intending to do with your career, and how are you hoping to create a meaningful conversation with your audience? And if you can keep that with the focus, the opportunities and the people that you want to have collaborate with you, they will come to you. And it sounds very Oprah and woo woo and all that kind of shit, but that has been the strongest integer of my commitment to my work, which is that if I allow myself to focus on what I am hoping to do with my career, that comes back to me in abundance. So, but definitely, politics of being an actor of color, trying to figure out how to find equal pay, how to make the same money that a woman who has lighter skin and straighter hair would make, even if she is, a black woman, if she's white presenting more than me, she's typically going to get the job, especially if it's a certain network or producer or something. You just get used to this idea that, oh, okay, I'm not thin enough. I'm not light enough. My hair's not straight enough. But the right opportunity is going to find me. And it always does. I mean, there's so much content out there right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hasn't that also diluted the money a little bit too? The pay can't be like what it was when there was less content out there.
I think that's probably right. But I also think that as far as any of your audiences in this industry knows, it's like Wild Wild West out there right now as far as streaming service or Netflix or Apple TV or NBC or CBS. I mean, you really have to help to create the conversation for yourself as an actor or director or writer. You have to have a group of people around you that really support you and support your perspective. Inspired by your work and want to hold the industry to a standard, but often it's not skewed toward a meritocracy. And so you do have to figure out other ways to edify yourself and fortify your inspiration for the work. Because otherwise you could be infinitely depressed.
Yeah. Right. So what do you do? What do? You exercise?
I exercise. I mean, I meditate. I keep a close, tight-knit group of friends around me that remind me of where I've come from. And, as you know, I have Jacob, our son, and he's constantly reminding me of how I, she did say to me one time when I was working on a play, Disgraced, in fact, he's like, you do know you work here, right? Like I was like, well, yes, honey, I do know I work here. It was, if ever my pancakes aren't up to snuff, he keeps me in check. Do you know what I mean? So
I know, because I've never I can't make a pancake even close to, these are mom's pancakes.
Yeah, exactly. And this past weekend I made biscuits, which were insane, good. So, I mean, no, I keep a group of people around me that keep me very grounded, and I just try to stay close to what it is I know I want to do. And there's no way to be comfortable in the position that we're in as artists.
Right.
And there's no way to have a sense of, I'm going to get up and go to work today, and it's 9 a.m. and I'll be at work at 9:30. I'm going to leave at 5. That's just not the way of an artist. And it took me a while to get comfortable with being uncomfortable all the time, as far as what I can expect from my career. So some of it is just, surrendering to the experience of being an artist. The rest of it is, making sure you have people around you that support and inspire you to stay focused. And the kids do a lot of that for me. Lena too. But I have great co-parents and I have a team of people working with me to find good opportunities for me and find good collaborators. So
yeah, I sense that. You got the series going now. Well, this series, at least for one season.
I'm doing Living with Yourself. I'm doing a TV show called Nosferatu on AMC.
Oh, that's going on too. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the one from Stephen King's son.
That's right, Joe Hill.
Joe Hill.
Mm-hmm.
So it's horror, I guess. Horror, or is it
some thrills
and chills?
Thrills and chills.
Yeah, I mean by osmosis or whatever.
I mean, it's scary.
It is.
It's called Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Zachary Quinto and
oh yeah, right. He's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then Luke Cage. And
yes, I don't know if they're going to have a third season, but
I'm sure
I would love to do another season of Luke Cage and run around Harlem.
Mm-hmm. They shoot that all in Harlem.
Shoot in Harlem
and in the studio.
And then they have a studio where they shoot it, and I can't tell you where that is. But
yeah, that's a thing, huh? So they don't let most of the time they don't divulge where they shoot these things, I guess. Then otherwise people just show up walking around there all the time.
Yes, they would. I mean, you heard about Comic-Con and how crazy that can be. So.
Oh, what they show up at that, and then why didn't you get invited to that?
Comic-Con?
Yeah, with that cast, the Luke Cage, weren't they at Comic-Con?
They were, yeah. And
so you got Jacob a badge through that.
Yes, I got Jacob a badge. The Marvel comic fans are enthusiastic.
Well, they were to
say the least,
right? So because I guess they're anticipating certain people showing up and whatever, actors and whatnot from certain shows. Maybe the line of fiction, nonfiction gets a little blurry sometimes for some of these.
Sometimes,
but there of course these are the
too.
reason these shows are such big successes. Are those same people, right? So
right,
you can't really.
Yeah, and it started out as a comic book, so
right.
If you're a comic book fan, you're going to follow the TV show or the movie or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that, and that's really all I can talk about right now.
Okay, that's plenty. I don't know. It's all television. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
So if you're, listen to, if you're producing a new Broadway show, here's somebody who's.
Oh, me?
Yeah, well.
I mean, I love Broadway. I love theater. Mm-hmm. I can't do it as much as I would like because it just doesn't,
Well. They don't line up in a row evenly either. Like, it would be nice if you just...
I know it never does line up in a row. It's not supposed to, I don't think.
No.
But sometimes it does, and then that's always weird because you're exhausted. But...
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when Glenn Close, how she can get through that, the amount of demand on her, and she's got to be 70... I think she's 71 or something like that. So I'm just thinking, like, my goodness, how do you do that? And that's a lot about preserving your spiritual and physical energy and really resting and preparing and being in good shape and then preserving it, and then you can tap it when you need to.
I think so. I mean, I think working as a theater artist doesn't matter if you're in lighting design or you're doing directing or you're there is an athletic performance experience to it, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a certain level of mental and emotional and artistic stamina in order to stay in that game because the audience requires it. Like they're not going to...
Right. They want the money shot type of moments.
They want them.
That play you did up in Ithaca some years ago, which was, I thought, fairly demanding.
That was a one-woman show called Neat. It was written by...
that one where you were singing...
Charlene Woodard.
Charlene, of course, the great Charlene Woodard, the actor, and
she also does a number of one-woman shows, which are incredible.
I'd love to see one.
Yeah,
because she's, somebody I remember very well from from a long time, going all the way back. I couldn't believe that. I thought in my mind she was still just like a 40-year-old actor. I had no idea.
Well, she looks amazing. She looks amazing. I mean, she looks, like she takes very good care of herself. But
you gotta, is your point you're making. You gotta, otherwise you're not going to have the longevity. I mean, Richard, you could look like Richard Burton, who looked like he was 70 when he was 30. Too. Mm-hmm. Some of these old theater guys from England, and it was a very different approach then. Yeah. They just sort of, I don't know what they were doing, but they were
smoking and drinking,
and acting really well.
Smoking and drinking.
Yeah. And maybe it was a different time, though.
That's right.
There were only like 20 of them, and they worked all the time. And, maybe their lifespan was 40. Maybe they had 40 good years or something. I don't know how it worked. I don't know how it worked. Anyway, well, let's do this again sometime when, when there's another great reason to do so.
There hopefully will be very soon.
Wait, do you have something you're not telling me?
All the time. Yes, of course. You always have to try to have something on the back burner, something on the front burner, and there's something you're serving up, which in this case is Pipeline. And I hope that all of your audience will go out and
well, right now,
fire up their computers and go to www.BroadwayHD.com.
Yeah.
And subscribe. And then check out Pipeline, the play. And that's really important to me.
Great. So for all those who are listening in, hoping for a more, I don't know, what do you call it, more dramatic kind of conversation, I'm sorry to disappoint you about the marriage and...
What marriage?
The and the dissolution thereof. Alrighty, well, thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.
Okay, bye.
Alrighty.